Hello there, welcome once more to this YouTube channel. Kindly subscribe to this channel. The topic is comparative anatomy of the urinary system of vertebrates. Comparative anatomy of the urinary system of vertebrates. I'm going to be considering the basic structure and origin of the vertebrate kidney, the succession of kidney in vertebrates. Then I'll take a look at the urinary bladder. Now you need to remember that the urinary system includes the kidneys and their ducts, the urinary bladder and urethra. So don't forget that. The functions of the urinary system is also worth noting. The urinary system is very important in production, transport and storage of urinary waste. You need to remember that each kidney is composed of a large number of units that are called the tubules or nephrons. Their number, complexity and arrangement differ in different groups of vertebrates. That is what this discussion is all about. So what are the succession of kidney in vertebrates? The succession of kidney in vertebrates. Evolution of kidney takes place as these structures. You have the archenephros, Pronephros, Mesonephros and Metanephros. So that's the way you find kidneys in vertebrates. What do you need to know about the archenephros? The archenephros is actually an excretory organ of ancestral vertebrates. It's also called the Metanephros. It runs throughout the entire length of the column that you find in the vertebrates. The archenephros is composed of a pair of archenephric ducts, and each of the ducts has a pair of tubules in a segment. Each tubule is opened by what we call the nephrostome into coelom, and near each nephrostome there is an external glomerulus. The archenephros, you note that all the tubules actually drain into duct which opens in the cloaca, and the archenephros is found in the larvae of certain cyclostomes, but you don't find it in the adult vertebrates. But the assumption is that archenephros is what actually gives rise to all the kidneys that you find in vertebrates during the course of evolution. So as far as excretion is concerned, in vertebrates, you have tissue fluid discharged as an excretory structure. Tissue fluid discharge in the glomerulus goes to the coelom, nephrostomes, and eventually through the tubules to the archenephric duct, and then the tissue fluid goes to the cloaca, and then it goes to the outside. All that is illustrated right here. The structure of the archenephros is illustrated right here. Pronephros is some other form of kidney we really need to talk about. Pronephros. This is the first kidney tubules to appear in the embryos of all vertebrates, and is found dorsal to the anterior end of the coelom on either side. The pronephros consists of 3 to 15 tubules segmentally arranged, one opposite each of the anterior mesodermal summits. Pronephros is active in adult forms of some primitive fish like the lamprey or the hagfish. There are only 3 pronephric tubules in the embryo of the frog. You have 7 pronephric tubules in human embryo, and you have about a dozen in chick embryo. That's for the birds now. In fishes, the nephrons degenerates, but the organs remain, and becomes a component of the immune system. Each tubule opens into the coelom by the funnel or nephrostome. So you also have the nephrostome here as part of the pronephros. Also projecting into the coelom, near each tubule, you have an external or naked glomerulus without capsule. I'm still talking about the pronephros. All tubules of a pronephros opens into a common pronephric duct, and this leads posteriorly into the embryonic cloaca. In mammals, what do you have? You have a functional pronephron, which does not develop transitory. It's soon replaced by the next stage of mesonephros. So the mesonephros replaces the pronephros in mammals like humans. Still talking about the pronephros, it's functional only in embryonic or the larval stage of amphibians. In the humans, you find it in the embryonic stage. Then for amphibians, for example, you find it in the larval stage. That's where you find the pronephros. So it's actually a temporary kidney. Here, it's very important in the larval stage of amphibians. It's very important as far as osmoregulation is concerned. But for adult cyclostomes, the pronephros is retained throughout life in adult cyclostomes. And for a few telos fishes, like the lamprey or hagfish, the pronephros is actually not urinary. It's mainly lymphoidal in function. It has some lymphoid functions. Now let's talk about the mesonephros. The mesonephros comes after the disappearance of the pronephros. It's the second kidney. It's called the Mesonephros, so it appears after the disappearance of the pronephros in vertebrates. It's formed by corpuscles and tubules that develop caudal to the pronephric region. And all this comes from connections with existing pronephric ducts. Now, at this point, the pronephric duct becomes the mesonephric duct. At the point at which you have the mesonephros formed, the pronephric duct now becomes the mesonephric duct. You have an illustration of the mesonephros right here. You can see the mesonephric duct there. Don't forget that the mesonephros is functionally better than the pronephros, and the mesonephros has mesonephric tubules which are numerous, longer, and they develop internal glomeruli. And these internal glomeruli are enclosed in capsules and form what we call the mammalian bodies. So the mesonephros is also called the Wolffian body, and you have the mesonephric duct. I told you forms from the pronephric duct. The mesonephric duct is also called the Wolffian duct. In amniotes like reptiles, birds, and mammals, mesonephros is functional only in the embryos, replaced by metanephros in adults. So in humans, for example, you have mesonephros only in the embryos. By the time the individual is born, and in all of us adults, you have metanephros. What about the fishes? Fishes and amphibians have mesonephros functional both in the embryos as well as in the adults. So I hope you are appreciating the differences we have. We're talking about comparative anatomy of the urinary system of vertebrates, comparing the urinary system of various classes of vertebrates. We want to see the similarities, and we're also trying to see the differences. So that's all I'm pointing out here. What about opisthonephros? Opisthonephros, you have in sharks and the cyclilians, you have mesonephric tubules extending posteriorly throughout the length of the coelom. So you have a kidney that is called the posterior kidney or the opisthonephros, and it's usually drained by the mesonephric ducts. The opisthonephros is actually similar to the mesonephros, but the mesonephros appears during embryonic development in reptiles, birds, and mammals. But in opisthonephros, it's the adult kidney for vertebrates like the sharks. Now let me talk about the metanephros. The metanephros is the functional kidney of higher vertebrates or amniotes. The metanephros begins to develop during the 6th or 7th week, and then you have metanephric tubules developing. All the mesonephric tubules disappear except the ones associated with the testis in male that will eventually form the vas deferens. The number of nephric tubules actually, you have a large number. You have up to 4.5 million in some species, and all these nephric tubules are drained by a duct called the metanephric duct or the ureter. The metanephros in reptiles is confined to the pelvic region. It's small and compact, and it has a lobulated surface. In birds, the metanephros is located in the pelvic region with united posterior ends. You have short ureters which open into the exterior. The metanephros in mammals is compact, bean shaped. The mammals have ureter that leaves the hilum, that's the hilum of the kidney, actually the part where you have blood vessels and nerves entering and leaving the kidney. Don't forget that in mammals, the kidney has a thin U-shaped loop of Henle that extends between the proximal and distal convolutions of the metanephric tubule. These loops are absent in reptiles, so the loop of Henle is absent in reptiles and other vertebrates, and the loop of Henle is rudimentary and quite short in birds. Mammals have kidney with the outer cortex and quite a number of renal corpuscles, and you have an inner medulla having collecting tubules and loops of Henle. All these are aggregated into one or several pyramids that tapers into the pelvis. The pelvis is hollow and receives urine, which exits the kidney via the ureter. Still talking about the mammalian kidney, it does not receive afferent venous blood supply as there is no renal portal system. What about the kidney in reptiles? The kidneys that you find in reptiles consist of a number of lobules arranged in a broader and linear pattern. Each lobule, when you take a look at it, it contains a single branch of the ureter in its center, and then you have collecting ducts emptying into the ureter. The reptiles have a kidney with relatively few nephrons compared with other amniotes of a similar size. This could be because of their lower metabolic rates. Right here is an illustration of the kidney as you find in mammals. The mammalian kidney, illustrating the cortex, the medulla, the renal pelvis, they are all shown here. Let me talk about the urinary bladder. You find the urinary bladder in all vertebrates except the agnatans, snakes, crocodilians, some lizards and birds. You don't have urinary bladder. But the ostriches, as far as the birds are concerned, the ostriches have urinary bladder. The urinary bladder originates from the ventral cloacal wall and portion of the allantois. How does the urinary bladder in fishes look like? Can you take a look at this diagram? You appreciate how the urinary bladder in fishes look like. It's actually a tubal bladder, as you can see in the diagram. It's tubal. So the bladder in fishes, the bladders, you find bladders that are terminal enlargement of the mesonephric ducts, and these are called tubal bladders. So you don't have just one, you have in humans, you have a number of them. The urinary bladder in fishes are not significant because fishes are immersed in water. Many fishes extract fresh water. Many fishes can actually extract fresh water from salt water, and as they drink water, they concentrate. They can extract the salt from the water because of this tubal bladder that they have. The urinary bladder in amphibians arise as evaginations of the ventral wall of the cloaca. The urinary bladder in amphibians is somewhat large and thin-walled, Take a look right here, you will see the urinary bladder in amphibians that comes from the ventral wall of the cloaca. So it's a cloaca bladder. That's what you have in what? Amphibians. The urinary bladder in amphibians, like you can see here in the diagram, connects with the cloaca a short distance beyond the openings of the archenephric ducts. In turtles are also amphibians. You have a pair of accessory urinary bladder which is connected with the cloaca and functions as accessory organs for respiration. So the urinary bladder in turtles actually serves as accessory organs for respiration. That's quite remarkable. What about the urinary bladder in birds? Urinary bladder is absent in birds, and it reduces the energy requirements for flight. I said except the ostriches. Urinary waste in birds usually are mainly in the form of uric acid and are eliminated via the cloaca along with the feces. So both the urine and the feces of birds goes out through the cloaca. That's quite interesting. Right here you have an illustration of the bladder. As you can see in amphibians, it's illustrated here. Also what you see in reptiles, the bladder as seen in reptiles. You can appreciate how evolution of the bladder has occurred in the various classes of vertebrates as seen in the illustration here. What about the urinary bladder in mammals? Urinary bladder is present in all mammals and it arises as evaginations of the ventral wall of the cloaca. The urinary bladder is muscular and connects to the outside by the urethra in mammals. The urethra is longer in males and passes through the penis and opens at the tip through the external urethral orifice. I'm still talking about the mammals, urinary bladder in mammals. In female mammals, like in the rats, you have urethra that opens independently through the clitoris. In other mammals, the urethra enters the urogenital sinus or vestibule. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye for now.